Dele. Good evening. Today, for your sake, I'll be speaking in English. I might need some help with some of my words, so I'll depend on you guys to help me with that. I prefer to speak in Tibetan, but if I speak in complete Tibetan, maybe you'll get just a half of it. Today, the main goal for you is to get together, know each other, and then know the reason why we are gathered here and what is important for you as a Tibetan youth. So I really need you to please put away your cell phone for just 2 hours. Please do not be on your cell phone as a mark of respect for everybody gathered here. And I think that's a very good practice that we, all of us, including myself, needs to practice. Right. So if something important is happening, learn to keep the cell phone away. Thank you. So first of all, I would like you to see the schedule. The reason we are gathered here today is November the 5th, which is day after tomorrow, is His Eminence Professor Samdho Rinpoche's 85th birthday. So we are celebrating His Eminence Professor Samdho Rinpoche's birthday today. I will not go into the details of his life because we have our speaker Tibetan, who will be giving you the briefest biography of His Eminence Professor Samdho Rinpoche. The reason being is His Eminence Professor Samdho Rinpoche has done so much. Even if we have 10 hours to speak just about his biography, that won't be enough. But with respect to tomorrow being Monday, and you all have to go to school and universities and college, so I cannot hold you here for 10 hours. That is the very reason our youth coordinator, Umelam Youth Coordinator, Tibetan, will be giving you a very brief biography of Professor Samdho Rinpoche. That's part of the program. And then there is a speech given by His Eminence Professor Samdho Rinpoche himself, but this is not today. This speech was given in 2018, just before COVID, when Youth for Umelam, Minnesota had celebrated His Eminence's birthday. So that was a message for youth. However, regardless of when it was given, the speech is direct appeal to the Tibetan youth. So I thought it would be a good idea for you to see Samdho Rinpoche in person speaking. Maybe you have seen Samdho Rinpoche speaking, or maybe you have not, right? So I don't want to assume anything. Just know how Samdho Rinpoche looked like, how Samdho Rinpoche sounds like, and what is his message to the youth. And that message is in Tibetan. So I know many of you understand Tibetan, even though you might not be able to speak it fluently. Does not matter. You have a Tibetan DNA. You are Tibetan. So slowly, I think it's important for all of you, including myself, to speak in Tibetan, improve our Tibetan, keep up our Tibetan identity. So I will not translate it. I need you to really concentrate more and try to understand what His Eminence is saying. Okay? So that is the only thing in Tibetan today. Then you have our youth coordinator, Tenzin Kunsela, and Tenzin Namjula was the former VTAG coordinator. How many of you know that there's VTAG Canada here in Toronto? Very few. So there is voluntary Tibet advocacy group in Canada and all over the world. That is the initiation of the Central Tibetan Administration, which is our Tibetan government in exile. So Namjula was the coordinator last year. Every year they have a new coordinator. Okay? So I've invited her to speak to you. And then there will be a very brief video presentation. And I seek your patience. It's 14 minutes. You live in the world of 1 minute reel. I might be asking you too much to focus for 14 minutes, but you are born a Tibetan. You are born with a responsibility. So when you have such a heavy responsibility on your shoulder, you need to be a little different and extraordinary, right? So I would need you to focus on for 14 minutes. The 14 minutes video is as I have here, let me see here. So at 6:45, the video presentation on 4 commitments of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So how many of you have heard His Holiness the Dalai Lama? Heard about it? Almost everyone. That's great. How many of you have seen His Holiness the Dalai Lama in person and got his blessings? Wow, wonderful. Huge majority. Great. So as a Tibetan, you're born and your family says, you know, like it's always in your ears. But for you, Tibetan, how old is His Holiness going to be this July? 80? I'm hearing 80. How old will His Holiness be in July 2024? Say it. You don't have to raise your hand. Just say it out loud. 90. Yes. His Holiness is going to be 90 years old in July 2025. He's going to be 90. You can imagine, right? At 90, it is time that we take the responsibility away from his shoulder. His Holiness at the age of 15 took the responsibility to work for all Tibetans, inside and outside Tibet, right? He has done all these years. And you are what His Holiness called the tomorrow of Tibet, the future of Tibet. So if you are going to represent what His Holiness's wants in the world, you better know what are his main commitments, right? We know His Holiness as a Lama on a throne, right? As a religious figure, but His Holiness is more than that. His Holiness was also our political leader until 2011. Now it is completely given to a democratically elected leader. So His Holiness is not just religious political leader. His Holiness is our very own identity, right? So for that, it is very important for you, future of Tibet, the young leaders who's going to lead the Tibetan cause tomorrow or even today. You need to know what are the 4 most important things that matter to His Holiness, right? We all want His blessings, but do we even ponder what His Holiness wants? So that's why I wanted to share this 4 commitments video, and it is given by a professor who's a monk, Geshe-la, and his English is very simple. You might even find some pronunciations like mine, like, you know, somewhat not so nice to your ears, but get his message, right? So through him, you will know what are the 4 most important things that matters to His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So you will have a presentation like that. And today the organizer is Umelang Toronto. So our full name is Global Tibetan Movements for Middle Way Approach, right? So I'm the president, he's the vice president, and all of the people who you see in blue and white chuba, we are 8 executive members. So we organized it in your honor to celebrate Samdor Rinpoche's birthday. But the reason that we say this program is going to be English, the reason we said, hey, what do the Tibetan young people want to eat? They don't want to eat momo and tuba all the time. What do they want? Korean cuisine. So we brought you Korean cuisine, and it's on the way. My son is bringing hot and fresh from your very favorite yummy restaurant in the Koreatown. So it's coming. It's on its way. I see lots of faces going, like eyes going bigger. Good. So yeah, enjoy the Korean cuisine. You like it. So we are trying to do what you like, so that you start coming and taking some responsibilities, right? If you don't know, how would you take the responsibility? So please, before I get very long, my urge for you is, whatever organization you see in Canada, whether it is SFT, whether it's TYC, whether it's Umelang Toronto, whether it's WeTag, as long as you get engaged for Tibet, you are welcome everywhere, especially to Umelang Toronto. You can come work for Tibet. We're not going to ask you your way or your path or whatever, right? We just want you to have all kinds of platforms to work for Tibet, because we can never have enough young Tibetans working for Tibet. So please take all the platforms you see here, especially as the president of Umelang. I urge you to join us, educate yourself about the cause of Tibet, what's happening in Tibet, what you can do, and then you lead us, and we'll support you. Okay? So with that, I'll conclude my, to be brief but long, welcome speech. Among us, we also have Pema Kungala. Many of you might have seen his through Facebook or through YouTube, or some of you might have been to the Chinese embassy when we went to welcome Pema Kungala and his group. So I will not speak more about Pema Kungala's goal, what he has done. I will leave it up to the very own Pema Kungala here, who will also tell you about his mission, what he's doing, what the young leaders like himself is doing for Tibet. So everybody can do all kinds of things. At the end, if we are working for Tibet, every way is the right way. Okay? Thank you very much. Thank you. I've never seen the Tibetan youth so focused on someone like older, like ba 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 ba. So thank you. It's very encouraging. Next we have brief biography presented by Tibetan, and she is the youth coordinator for Menam Toronto. Thank you very much.
Hi everyone, my name is Tibetan, and I'm one of the youth coordinators for Menam Toronto, also known as Middle We Approach Toronto. And today, since it's going to be Samdo Rinpoche's birthday very soon, we're going to be talking about Samdo Rinpoche, what he's done for the Tibetan community, and who he is. Next page. Okay, so here are some pictures of Samdo Rinpoche, if you guys don't know what he looks like. Okay, so he was born in eastern Tibet in the Kham province on November 5th, 1959. His birth name is Lobsang Tenzin, and at the age of 5, he was recognized as the 4th reincarnation of Samdo Rinpoche. And when the Chinese invaded Tibet, he was forced into exile along with His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama, and had to seek asylum in India. So he is recognized for his commitments to the teachings and guidance of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and spent his life following the Dalai Lama's principles of truth, non-violence, and compassion. As a devoted follower of the Dalai Lama, he inputs the teachings and guidance of truth, compassion, and non-violence in his life. Here's a short quote by the Dalai Lama about compassion. I consider non-violence to be compassion in action. It doesn't mean weakness, cowering in fear, or simply doing nothing. It is to act without violence, motivated by compassion, recognizing the rights of others. Does anyone have any idea of what that means, or does anyone want to talk about how they feel about this quote? Anyone? Okay, that's fine. Okay, so Samdo Rinpoche. Oh, yes, sorry. Okay, so Samdo Rinpoche is also widely known for his transformative influence on Tibetan education. He was a former principal and director of several prestigious Tibetan institutions, and one of them was the Central University of Tibetan Studies in Sarnath, and changed the foundation of Tibetan education in exile. He made sure that students not only excelled academically, but they also upheld core values of Tibetan culture and Buddhism. His efforts has helped preserve the Tibetan identity for future generations. Wait, no, the other page. Yeah. Okay, so Samdo Rinpoche also played the pivotal role of being the first Kalun Tiba, or the Prime Minister of the Tibetan government in exile. His efforts to prioritize the Dalai Lama's counsel and wise governance is always reflected in his leadership. As a member of the Constitution Drafting Committee, chairman of the Tibetan Parliament in exile, he's worked hard to build a transparent political system. Okay, this is a solution proposed by the Dalai Lama that does not seek for full independence, where we get genuine autonomy, meaning freedom to maintain our culture, our religion, our social identity, and protect Tibet's natural environment. Here we have an image of His Holiness the Dalai Lama receiving the Nobel Peace Prize. He was awarded this honor because of his consistent efforts to resolve the Tibet-China conflict in peaceful ways through dialogue and understanding without promoting any violence and aggression. Due to this reason, he was recognized for his approach to seeking a peaceful solution through the middle way policy. As Samdul Rinpoche has been a supporter for Umilam for many years and as a close advisor to the Dalai Lama, he has worked hard to promote this approach as the best and realistic path to achieve peace and genuine autonomy. Professor Samdul Rinpoche's life has consistently shown selfless service, wisdom, and dedication to the Tibetan cause. As an educator to his leadership in exile governance, he remains as a guiding force for Tibetans advocating for Dalai Lama's vision of a peaceful resolution to Tibet-China conflict so we can preserve our unique identity and culture as Tibetan people. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bimala. She had her exams and tests and assignments and all that, but regardless of that, she did her research and she did the presentation. Wonderful, very simple, easy to understand. Thank you very much. As she mentioned, I just wanted to add one more line. So Professor Samdul Rinpoche, as an educator, as also Rinpoche, a very, very highly, how should I say, a very high-ranking Lama in Tibet. Regardless, he never sat on a throne and be offered with all kinds of things and just give the blessing. He didn't stop there. He did a lot of work, politically, religiously, as an educator, and a lot. And just so you know, when His Holiness devolved the power, Samdul Rinpoche was not called Sikyong then, he was called Kalun Tripa, which in English is Prime Minister. So he was the first political leader of the Tibetan government in exile. So that is something important for you to know if you need a point of reference who is Samdul Rinpoche. Okay, thank you. The next, we will display the video that I said is made by Samdul Rinpoche for Youth for Umilam in Minnesota. It's, I don't know how long it is, but please try to focus on understanding the Tibetan language. Thank you.
Sure. Umilam Krishna. 전전에 다리친의 주지를 나는 오메남기 시주 권리야 도종다 도전지 송세 남이르데 가르종 장기다 베슬리뷰 니메 오메남 시주티 콘스점을 준비 라나메르 공시다 전주비는 망토기 되면서 지나 도시 롤링 제가 몸을 두루타는 다주세다 별만지를 해서기 지금 다주세 시주 몸 부진도는 더 간다 란제 샴방기 다루타라 로모와지 가네 초니자라 자미다 비리니자를 펜베 포자를 공식이 시주티 비미조나데 용도기 고도 유배 제고야지다 디 고도 빌타타 딜테네 베드텐다 세더기 베드티 마르사메 베드네 제고야디 미치칼레 베미운도를 제레겐 차비어레 레인장 아버드 나슌츠 데도르나 나고야스다 베즈나 고야지 차데요레 딜레인장 차서 오멜랑기 슈니 튼조부터 the location did not challenge just you more knowledge to challenge to talk. Motune language Bayadam, Kandara, building the message back part, mirror to go to Naya, let him take Juch was said the transition, language of the Naya, Joadam, Ishibu, the D language Kansa Jiravachi. Chitsita, Doni Nayati, the shag, catching them, Mrs. Good University, Tom Minute, the Yinaya, Jansu, Tundu Tone, Navi Dukaran, and Mrs. Escape. The Kansa Chidabe, Chisita, Tunjano, Matunjano, Kantar, Lord of India, Dinanati, Kaduine, Tulishabesta, Tichetu, Jundu, Dilapembe, Ledu College Bine, Yamuru Tone, Naguesta, Mission Valley, Gunaguet, Leje, Telezan, Santu, Milan, Sibuto, Pille, Legend D, and then Pille in the Massage, but Junjun to Esta, Lamun, and you show you some of the best you.
Lord, sinner.
Today I am going to speak about the four principal commitments of His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama. So before I begin my talk, I would like to say thank you to the organizers who have given me an opportunity to speak. And I feel that, I think I'm the only one lecturer who is speaking here, and I feel that I'm taking away the students' platform. So now coming back to the topic, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, he has said that we have traveled a long journey from Stone Age to the Atomic Age, and we have reached to the peak of the highest development. But still today we have a lot of challenges, we have a lot of problems in our world. So what are the challenges? What are the problems? So first thing that, first challenge is the increasing and enormous human population. This is a big challenge. Then the second challenge is the gap between the rich and poor. So morally it is not wrong, but practically it is also the source of problem. Then the third challenge is the religious disharmony. Today we can see there are so many civilization conflict. You can see, many communal violence in the name of religion. It is also a very unfortunate thing. Then the fourth one is the environmental degradations. Today the basic, necessities of our survival, like fresh air, clean waters, all are being polluted. Then the last, challenges is the violence in the form of war, violence in the form of terrorism. So in the early time, people used to fight each other to capture the territory, to become more powerful. But today, violence and war become a trade and business. So if you want to prevent the war, that means that you have to stop this massive productions of the vital industry, which is not possible, which is not going to happen. So, in order to face this, challenges, His Holiness Dalai Lama said that there is a basic cause of all these challenges. So what is the basic cause of all these challenges? His Holiness said that, the basic cause of these challenges is a decline of human ethics and human value. So therefore, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, he decided to make 4 commitments. The first commitment is as a human being. So he feels that he has to dedicate his entire life with the full capacity to upgrade, restore, and promote the human value with the ethical way of life. Then, second commitment is as a religious leader or a Buddhist monk. So he has to devote himself to bring a religious harmony in our society. So religious harmony here, it means that he or she has to promote the religious mind, or he or she has to lead the religious life. Then the third commitment, as a Tibetan or the leader of the Tibetan people, so he has to work on the resolutions of the Tibetan issue. At the same time, he has to preserve the Tibetan language, Buddhist culture and heritage, and also he has to protect the Tibetan plateau, Tibetan environment, which is the source of water to the entire Asian countries. Tibet is the third pole. So all these biggest, largest rivers, they are coming from Tibet, and millions of Asian people, their life is heavily depending on this, on Tibet's water. So then the latest commitment, His Holiness the Dalai Lama said that I have to preserve and promote the ancient Indian wisdom. Ancient Indian wisdom, here it means that, Indian classical philosophical tradition, and also the Indian healing systems like Ayurvedic, traditions, and also the Indian arts and architectures, Indians, music and performing of arts. So these are the relevant to the today's world. So, what are the things that His Holiness has taken an action regarding his commitment? To promote the human value, His Holiness has written so many books. I'm not going to speak all of them, so I'm going to share only few books. First is The Art of the Happiness, published in the 1998. Then the second is the Ethics for the New Millennium, published in the 1999. And third is The Beyond Religion, published in the 2011. This book becomes very, very famous, and also it becomes the categories of the bestseller in the world. So His Holiness also introduced some practical working system. His Holiness has taught us the universal responsibility. Through that way, the foundation for universal responsibility was born in 1990. So this foundation, they have formulated a course and curriculum. They are providing a workshop, seminar, dialogue to the entire European country. This became very famous. Then His Holiness the Dalai Lama taught the secular ethic. Through that way, Emory University, it has launched a new program which is called the C Learning, Social, Emotional, Ethical Learning. These two programs become a very, very famous. The C Learning program, it is adopted by so many countries. So these two programs, actually it is very feasible, very accessible, and very suitable to the entire world at the present age. So there is another program which is brought by the indigenous people from the 7 different nations from the South America and Canada. So this program also providing the dialogues, seminars and conference and workshop. They have also organized 2 or 3 conferences, 2 or 3 workshops in Dharamsala. So if you look at His Holiness the Dalai Lama, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, each and every single day, more than 200 people are coming to visit His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and he is sending a message of love and compassion. Through that way, he has been trying to promote the human value. So in terms of the second commitment, regarding the religious harmony. His Holiness the Dalai Lama has written a book which is called Towards a True Kinship of the Faith, which is published on the 2010. And also, frequently His Holiness the Dalai Lama, he has been meeting with the top spiritual leaders. He has met the Christian popes. He has met this Mother Teresa, and he has met the Archbishop Desmond Tutu. And we have experienced, we are the witness that a friendship between His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu is a very prominent one. And His Holiness Dalai Lama has met so many Muslim leaders. And His Holiness the Dalai Lama has met so many Hindu leaders. And His Holiness the Dalai Lama met so many Sikh, leaders. And His Holiness the Dalai Lama met many Jewish leaders. So His Holiness the Dalai Lama, he has recommended to us, we have to study about the inter-religious subject. And His Holiness the Dalai Lama, he is visiting to the holy sites from all different major religious traditions. He visited to the temples, he visited to the churches, he visited to the mosques, And also His Holiness the Dalai Lama encouraging us to pay a visit to the holy sites from all these major tradition religions. So, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and also, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, he has attended to so many inter-religious, conferences, and he has attended to so many, inter-religious prayer in India and across the globe. In terms of the third commitment, to preserve the Tibetan language, Buddhist culture and heritage, since His Holiness the Dalai Lama come to India, he has met the first Prime Minister of India, Jawaharlal Nehru, and he requested Jawaharlal Nehru to establish a separate school for the Tibetan children, that he can provide the modern education. At the same time, he can provide the education of Tibetan language, Buddhist culture and heritage. So therefore, today we can see the Central Schools for Tibetan, CST school, then the TCV school, Tibetan Children Village, and also you can see the Masuri homes. At the college level, today you can see the Central University of Tibetan Study in Varanasi, and also the Sara College in Dharamsala, Dalai Lama Institution for Higher Education here in Bangalore. And if you go to the Tibetan settlement, you can see all these monastic universities. So if you look at these Tibetan schools, Tibetan colleges, Tibetan monastic university, they have been providing education not only to the Tibetan, they are providing education to the Himalayan people, Mongolian people. And if you go to the Western countries like European countries, American countries, you can see so many Buddhist centers. We have opened the Buddhist centers like a Chinese restaurant across the globe. So these Buddhist centers, we have been offering a course of the Buddhist philosophy, Buddhist epistemologies, and Buddhist science, Buddhist psychology to the entire world. So in terms of his last, latest commitment to revival the ancient, Indian knowledge and ancient Indian tradition, His Holiness Dalai Lama decided to establish a new institution or new center. He has already, inaugurated this center in Bodh Gaya, Dalai Lama Center for Tibetan and Indian Ancient Wisdom. That's all. Thank you.
So much for listening with such attention. I was watching you guys and you were really listening. Thank you very much. The food is here, but before that, we would have one more speaker. But before introducing the next speaker, I want to acknowledge Tenzin Sunju here. Sunju, I know you're Sunju. Are you Tenzin Sunju? Okay. So Geshe-la just talked about the sea learning. And how many of you know that Sunju-la is leading sea learning classes here at TCC? How many of you know? How many of you go there? Wonderful. 5, 6, 7? Yeah. So Sunju-la and the other? So they have a team, so they're trained and they are teaching the sea learning education that Geshe-la talked about, which is in line with His Holiness is one of the commitments for universal responsibility, right? So when you listen to the commitments of His Holiness, you know how broad his vision is, right? As a human being, as a Tibetan, as a religious and political leader of the world, not just Tibet, right? So that's very, very important for us Tibetans to know how broad, how big is the vision, the practice, the method, and how far His Holiness's teachings and advices reaches. Like wherever you go, people will recognize you as a Tibetan. Oh, where's Tibet? Tibetan? If you say Dalai Lama, oh, so in the outside world already, His Holiness is our identity. So we better know His commitments. I hope with today's video, I hope that you now know more about His Holiness and what matters to His Holiness more than before you entered inside this room. So again, big acknowledgement to Tenzin Nudula here for following the vision. I did not know she was coming, so I'm so glad you came. Thank you. Before the dinner, our team members will be setting up for the dinner. While you smell the delicious Korean, food, I would like you to focus here to the stage and listen to our next speaker, Pema Bungala. Okay? Thank you.
레귤 디 균에 시주 대단 요도 삼족 괴바마세 페미남 랑니기 괴코다 산비신 롬니 제베 통내 랑기 계획당 리슌 홍족당 율소 공시 락달 제초파 대신 회죽남 센시기 자대 법자 록수 대미괴파 랑니기 파만장도 응알균시 대초패 가왕 괴비시도 디마라도게 때에 디만 한거디 그든 한거디 아니거디 괴난게 고유 또그 꼭다 zamningi yangzeyang ne sumba takpe pyoge rangju koyukde zubdungi wo khayane ne te tangda gongshi yobare deyang kamdege churasagya tagul shigya chewe zubdun leshidang sele gebe teka ngoden chepe ne tangla tene 그게 랑중 코유가 계속 제답되게 또는 땅을 그게 코유가 도시 땅과 대 비밀소 그게 태그 옆에 좀 많이 봐 괜히 에시에 소 체가티 중풍 땅 고래 남시 교도기 최도 내가 체외 백합직 차별 그게 코리오가 너게 대체 네 독재소 zamningi nimbo saya mambo 세솔라 너게 테메 임바데 맞지 계집 직접 칼라 야나 슝기 그나 라타 심베 좀좀 예시워 그게 코요 도시 동시에 상족 여타 내슈 되베베 그글 휴신유에 대신 양락 중기 수준의 대배 레시 강sam량 통말 내기 괴미 소답당 코육라 내게 태민기 외전 톡 의민 담당 저들 저급에 그걸 휴신유에 아니 순반대 가라 그 나라마도 얘기가 근데 순반대 비밀소 라마라 지구다 딸래라네 양세 문진라 희지 참 외바 야나마도 슝기 딸래라네 양세 문진기 사치 그림라 희지 전에 그 남당계 그 랑신대배 리슌라 그 동탑 근처 매발 근처 지리에 디니 비밀소 세나 최소기 느디시 임박된 삽시기 개변 체도 대라 땅디 제다 제반이 배미 소대 아왕다 배미 모라 마백 제반 생기에 완전히 길치 소대 칼라 양심 원진기 그림 강식도 양나 슝기 대체 제발 타직도 깜빡하게 가격 받다 원서 중기 양심다 될래 내데 탑지 제배 토당 회 개체 미망라 예배 약격 적용에 백을 쉬신유 아니 타마들라 완수 그뒤니 같이 쓰기 제수 나왔다 많이 봐 완수 냠비 결촉다 개치 시슌 상만 세미식을 남네 별이 내게 탁죄 여배 등을 당 팀배 락달 시주 생각에 여기 수교인 여기 탑재니 공사 초기에 남대고 시작된 제배 생명시와 시설 흉배 레그시 완전 잠닝게 소대칼라 공사 초 해도 티베트 남북 체도 겹겨 남에 그 쉬신이 겔시 공사 초 배도 티베트 토바 중세 디니 시대당 장대라 개가 토베 로교랑 신대배 세도 사파시 차규래 이 말아서 다시 하다 다들 내기 비디오 가라 맞죠 근데 정말 하게 오토가 라인에 맞죠 난다 근데 MP다 또 투미도 마음부터 컨트롤 라인에 하고 근데 이 포인트야 컨트롤 그들도 토도가 라인에 그치나 맞다 레기션이라 그것도 들으시잖아 샤바야 말아서 이것도 스피 아니 이 가나 부자가 더 많구나 야들 맞죠 레기 비지 되게 요구도 없이 갈 법이다 근데 이제 또 단다 내가 디직 주고 된서 나랑 또 얘기하다 그래서 개미 슝이나 나랑 또 거기 있다 최근에 신경도 담에서의 분석이 이게 같이 간 거라 딱 이게 타겟 분석이 직 주도 돼야 먼저 보고 쏠라 보고 신경 쏠라 이 타겟 분석이 수집된 게 뭐지 도지 아무리 땅나 그래서는 누구라야 된도 가리라고 하디 프론트 또 나가라 프론트에 셈발을 나가라 또 물팀에 나가라 조디가 또 잖아 분석이 전 가지고 먼저 누구나 야가 있지 않는 말이 먼저 근데 누가 마시 별라이냐만은 그래서 갸나게 올라가야 프론트 나가라 뒤진 소고 프론트에 파마냥도 가게니 파샤고 이게 문제지 또 언제도 없어요 그래서 파마냥도 되었지는 파마기 다 갑자기 아요라 보고 된돌라 말하면서 대돈이 나가 가리나 나한테 이 멤버제 분들이 수집된 멤버지 있는거 단대 베이스 저거잖아 말하면서 신가라네 가랬다고 하지 지금 나가란 게라 수행 가랬다고 하지 갈다 계시 제다고 하지나 그 제게를 막이 다고 하지 막이 제게라 나가는 성사 가다 말하면서 부구출라 아니 가다 말하면서 부구출라 가랬다고 하지 나가라 그러면서 셈발라 아니 나가라 그러고 시들 이 중에 딱 혼자 별라이나 말하면서 나와요 말에 그러면서 지우고 이제 셈발이 지우고 등교에는 지답이요 말. 딱 완전 내라이나 나와는 말 맞아. 소음이 단다 신경도 와. 그래서 어디 말하면서 우리 다들 지금 땅 거에 이렇게 개침을 했지. 근데 완전히 나다 로 야야 이래 또 말하면 사실은 나도 너무 맞지 꼴도 와라 너무 맞지 아니 또 죽주 또 마시는가 그거 당고 여러분 얘기도 삐삐니 되게 이내 다 마음을 그때 정도로 또 대부분 소리가 그러나 또 로종지 아니 로종대야 소소하게 개변라 가다 네가 가라고 소소하게 개변이 지금 멤버체 냥보다 말하면 그 사진이요 언제 다시 땅 왜지 먼저 보고도 때 언제 개천부터 보고도 또 일부종 나이게 다들 완전 말하면 꽤 말하는 것이 아니야 단단히 그 센츄리요 말이야 센츄리요를 얘기 듣고 얘네 또 목종 내가 땡기 단다 갈라왔다 단다 인지도 보라도 로드 투미도 tum도 갈라 제시 개지 요라 이거 같은 것도 아니야 보고도 캐럿도 목종 요래 단다 인지계가 다다 요라 또내 말하면 그 신경 장고에 이렇게 개지 모르셔 뒤집식으로 아니 도대체 나
Nabaso tanda pimamala ye sumbati kyanzo what he has done hakunge chugena and the Facebook na the page yore the page the tanda dedwa the third peace rally marathon for Tibet wa di tanda shunuk page na mabu yora TYC na lo mabu pe le kyan sta wa na you would know like how far he's went and how many years, like, but selfless, and he's determined to still do it continuously. And in this samjigo mare, and the Pema Konga like go teacher, Kuranzu Jim na Talo do Chashavina, Rasde, Chu Dwadel, Chunani, Chung Shugi, Lojo Git. Right. Lojo Git. And if Quran Nyam do you again and the Pema Konga Sumanashi, because you know the language, you can reach further when you're in a country like Canada. Right. Just feeling for Tibet is not enough once the decision makers do not speak Tibetan. So someone like Quran Gumela. So since he was with them, he amplified their voices a lot, and I have been watching that. So the Indusamba big you need the content to speak, right? So the Indusamba and then use your language to further the Tibetan cause. So so that was like what Pema Mungala was appealing you at the end. So please go through his page. This is not the page. This was when we received Pema Mungala and the compatriots at the Chinese embassy. But I wanted to show you the banner. So when you see, if you want to take a picture of the demands and all, if you go to Facebook, you will see. And is there a YouTube video as well? You're a YouTube. You're a. So the Quran so the Ottawa page, 2 page here, lamba something nima kani get video sama daya yore. The Quran generation video la pe kauche the yahuta tuwa. So the tatuna yahu yore maras namlo la kale kene video yore. So once again, Pema la toche na di kawan check. So with that, we will break for dinner. Please eat here. Don't go. While you're eating, we're going to do much activities here. Okay? Thank you.
너무 잘 나갔죠.
We'll resume the program. Please continue to enjoy your meal, but kindly listen at the same time. Our next speaker, Tinsik Wasila, needs little time. She's digesting a good dinner. So in the meantime, I'll take 5-10 minutes and give you a very, very brief introduction about middle way policy. Okay? So, because we are, as I introduced before, we are Global Tibetan Movement for Middle Way Policy Toronto chapter. We took this responsibility last year, so it's just been a year since the Toronto chapter came into inception, right? And we're all volunteers, of course. And it's not like an indoctrination. I want you to understand what a middle way policy is. Okay, I'm not saying it's the best. To me, it's the best. Whether it's best for you or not, it's your decision. Wow. But I really need you to understand what a middle way policy is before liking it or not liking it as the option to resolve the Tibet-China conflict. So again, I would ask you back to please keep your cell phone away and look up, especially the last table. Sorry, can I have your attention, please? Thank you. Sorry, I'm a teacher by profession, so I can't help. All right. So the middle way policy is, to give it in a nutshell, it's not just giving up independence. Sometimes people tend to have that definition. It's not that. So middle way policy is the way forward. It's not a way backward saying, hey, China take Tibet, Mata. Okay? So what middle way policy is, in a very nutshell, we have put it in a pamphlet here. You will find it on your table. Please take these when you go home. It will not take more than 10 minutes, I promise, for you to read just the English part. And if you understand Tibetan and if you can read Tibetan, that's wonderful. I salute you. Please read both Tibetan and the English version. If not, I've tried to put as brief as possible in English in the brochure. So I would just read what you already have on your table, but since some of you are eating, you might not be able to see it in here. The middle way policy Toronto, what we do is, I'm going to read it and you will see the script on the screen as well. We reject, so that's very, very important thing. We reject China's claim that Tibet has historically been a part of China. So middle way policy, that is about one pillar is Tibet was an independent country. We are not giving it up to them. Tibet has been historically part of Tibet, China, like we do not accept that. The middle way policy does not accept that at all. But it's very important. We do not accept the present status of Tibet. So there lies on history, we do not accept that. We know, we have proven, even now the international law recognizes that Tibet has always been an independent country. And at the same time, we are finding a solution, we're trying to find a solution to the Tibet-China conflict, but that does not mean that we accept what's happening in Tibet today. Wow. At the same time, now this between the two. Tibet was an independent country. We are not asking for independent country to be back. At the same time, we are not accepting what China is doing now for the last 60 years in Tibet. So in between the two, treading a middle way. So in between the two, there is this middle way that we are treading. If you look into the history, you'll see how, I will not go into the details of history here, His Holiness's thoughts and how it eventually became a policy that's been unanimously adopted as the policy of the Tibetan administration. There's a whole history. We will do workshops in the future. I hope you'll come to that workshop and learn more about it, but I'm not going to go into details today. So the treading a middle path in between these two lies the policy and means to achieve a genuine autonomy within the framework of the People's Republic of China for all Tibetans living in 3 traditional provinces of Tibet. Through the middle way, we want a Tibet that encompasses all the 3 provinces of Tibet. Right now, there is something called TAR, Tibet Autonomous Region. We're not seeking that. That's done by China. But we're seeking an autonomy that is Tibet, that includes all the 3 provinces. Dode, Deme, Rizam, the entire Tibet. And this, what I explained to you, this path is called the middle way approach. It's a non-partisan, and it's a moderate position that safeguards the vital interest of all the concerned parties. So for Tibetans, what we get, the protection and the preservation of our culture, our religion, and the national identity. And for China, the security and their territorial integrity. So it's a win-win solution. It's not like I win and you lose, right? So, and that aligns with the vision of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And again, it's not just one person's order for the Tibetans to follow. There's a big history of that. We'll do a specific workshop on that, I promise, and I would urge you please to come to that workshop very soon. So I just brought here just 5 slides for you to have a bird's eye into what a middle way policy is. Next. So the middle way policy is based on pragmatism. It's practical. And it's for mutual benefit. I've already spoken about it. I'm not going to repeat it. Next. So middle way policy is, again, it's not like, okay, China, take Tibet. We want to be under you. We give up independence. That's not middle way policy. Middle way policy, the primary purpose of middle way policy is for the Tibetans. So we can go back to Tibet sooner, so the Tibet-China conflict is resolved sooner. This is a way which is most beneficial to Tibetans, not Chinese. And how can the middle way policy benefit Tibetans? I mean, like very small and easy. Again, today my whole focus is easy to understand. So middle way approach recognizes the oneness of Tibetan identity, as I already said before. Tibetans can benefit from who doesn't like money, who doesn't like economic development, who doesn't want to be the major economic power in the world. We can benefit from that development. How long that economic power will stay, we don't know. But as long as it stays, we can take benefit from that. Most important of that, that's the least important part, the economic part. Most important than that, we can preserve and promote our language and culture. And then it's talking about self-governance. When we say genuine autonomy for Tibet, it means we are going to govern ourselves within the larger framework of People's Republic of China, but we can self-govern our territory, preserving our language, our culture, our territory, and everything like that. And then it's the most important than that. Yes, we don't seek complete independence back to Tibet, but we still seek freedom, which is most important. Right now, what is lacking in Tibet is freedom. There is literally no freedom. So through middle way policy, we are trying to resolve the conflict so that the Tibetans have the freedom to live our own way of life by speaking Tibetan, but by going to monasteries, by becoming a monk or nun if you want to, by learning Tibetan in school and maintaining our identity. That's what we are seeking for. And as I said, middle way policy is also a win-win solution. It also benefits China. It's not just benefits Tibet. So middle way policy balances the sovereignty concerns of China. China doesn't want to have something taken out of their, the territory. So we remain with People's Republic of China. We're not saying we're going to take it away and no longer belong to you, right? So their sovereignty is preserved. And then more than the Buddhist, China is the most populous country in the world, as we know. And there are billions of Chinese who are Buddhist. By tradition, historically, they were Buddhist. And still, to this day, if a good day comes and His Holiness can go to China, you will see how many people will go and seek blessing from His Holiness. Every year, in the video you've seen before, every day 200 to 300 people come from all over the world to seek blessings from His Holiness, and many of them are Chinese. So, next. So what are we asking? The right for Tibetans to self-govern, preserve and promote Tibetan language, practice our religion free from interference. You know how they're saying, oh, we're going to recognize the reincarnation of Dalai Lama. We're not going to deal with that. We're not going to take that. We as Buddhists have our own right to follow our culture and our religion and our history without Chinese interference. That is a part of the middle way approach. Maintain the intergenerational transmission of identity and culture. So unlike today's Tibet, where the Tibetan children are brought to boarding school, residential school, away from their parents and then completely annihilated from Tibetan culture, Tibetan history, we do not want that. We do not accept that. What we are seeking is parents can, using the word, transmit our culture, religion, and heritage to our children, to our grandchildren, and accordingly to the outside world. And then to live our life in harmony with nature. So a huge part of middle way approach ask is protecting the Tibet's environment, which is crucial. And I will not talk more about it because Tenzin Sil or Namju, one of them, is going to talk about that. Go to the brochure. This part. Circle. If you can please look at the little diagram that I made there in the brochure. Okay, so the Memorandum of Genuine Autonomy for Tibet. That came, the reason for you to connect this 11 basic needs to today's event is when Samdho Rinpoche was the Kalon Tripa, the political leader of the Tibetan government in exile, Samdho Rinpoche made this genuine, it's called Memorandum for Genuine Autonomy. His Holiness's representatives had 10 times sat with Chinese counterparts and talked about it. And in their last conversation, they said, we want more explanation to that. We Tibetans, sometimes in our ignorance, might feel that, oh, His Holiness is a Buddha of compassion. Maybe he had some compassion for the China and gave up everything. That's not the case. Many scholars have called His Holiness not a very prominent religious leader, but also a very pragmatic and smart politician. So the Chinese government see through middle way policy, which is absolutely for Tibetans. That's why they wanted a complete description of what exactly we are asking for. And then that was elaborated in terms of Kalon Tripa Samdho Rinpoche when he was the Prime Minister. And then this was presented to the Chinese government. And in that memorandum, it's quite long, it's not just that, but I just took only one part of that for you to understand. The 11 basic needs. So it talks about culture. We want to maintain, preserve, promote our culture, our language, our religion, I talked about it, education, environmental protection, utilization of natural resources. That's what I didn't touch before. So we are asking the Chinese government to give us an autonomy which would enable us to take care of our natural resources. So far in the last 60 years, they have taken a lot from Tibet, but Tibet is a country rich with natural resources. We want to protect at least what is remaining. And then economic and development trade, public health, very, very important aspect of a human being, to have the freedom to be treated. Unlike today's Tibet, where sterilization, abortion, forced abortion, everything happens, we do not accept that. Right? We are asking for our choice, our way when it comes to our health. And then public security. In today's world, if you just say His Holiness the Dalai Lama, you go in the prison in Tibet. We don't want that. We need our security to maintain our identity. And then regulation of population migration. Right now, for every Tibetan, there are 7 to 8 Chinese in Tibet. We are seeking, we are asking the Chinese government to limit that. We're not saying every Chinese go back from Tibet. That's not going to happen. Right? If the Canadian government tells us to go back to Tibet and not be here, would every one of us go? It's not a possibility. Likewise, every Chinese leaving Tibet is not going to happen. But what we are asking through the genuine autonomy is give a limitation of how many Chinese can come to Tibet. The ratio. We want to maintain the ratio of Tibetans in Tibet so that it's our land. Right? And the last one is cultural, educational, and religious exchange with other countries. Tibetan cultural heritage, Tibet has so much to offer to the world. So through the genuine autonomy, we want the right to share our culture, our heritage, our tradition, our religion and whatnot to the outside world. So that is the genuine autonomy for Tibet that we are asking for. It's huge, it's vast, it's broad, it's visionary, and it's practical. So I will stop here and let Tenzin Kunsila and Namjula take over, and they will do their presentation and the activity. Thank you. Kunsila, please.
Name Tenzin Kunsila, and I'm one of the youth coordinators for Umilam Middleweight Toronto. And today's discussion, me and Namjul are going to be talking about why Tibet is important. And as Tibetans, we all know, obviously, why Tibet is important, right? I'm going to be talking about the spiritual importance of Tibet and also the geopolitical importance of Tibet. So in terms of our world right now, there's so much conflict and so much war and turmoil, and that's why it leads to the importance of Tibet's of what Tibet brings into the world. And essentially what I want to talk about is why it's so important to protect Tibet's identity, not only for Tibetans, but for the whole world. In the face of conflicts all over the world, we're seeing Ukraine and Russia, Palestine and Israel. Buddha's teachings as Tibetans, we know, are nonviolence and dialogue. And we also know that these values are so relevant in today's world more than ever. These values that Tibet exudes and upholds can offer guidance to the entire world. Tibetan Buddhism, as Ajay Gesam said, is spread to so many countries, India, Mongolia, Bhutan, and China. And in China, there's over 250 million Buddhists, right? Chinese people are drawn to Tibetan Buddhism, to the values that Buddhism teaches of peace and compassion. It sort of fills their spiritual void. And I also, when thinking about this topic, I also thought of this quote said by Richard Gere, who's a prominent actor, Western actor, who's also a passionate human rights defender for Tibet. Richard Gere said, "Tibet is a human rights issue, a civil and political rights issue, but there's something else too. Tibet has a precious culture based on wisdom and compassion. This culture addresses what we lack today, a sense of interconnectedness. We need to protect it for Tibetan people, but also for ourselves and for our children." So what this is essentially saying is that compassion and peace are messages that go beyond Tibet. And when I first heard this quote, I thought about how relevant it is today, that we all know, like growing up, we all know Tibet is a political issue, and that it's human rights issues and the territory that was occupied and taken away from us. We learned how it was a political issue, but what we need to realize today is that Tibet's unique culture, the values of peace and compassion, are the things that the whole world needs today. Tibet's culture is not only protecting Tibetan people, but sort of all of humanity, is what I'm trying to say. But Tibet isn't only spiritually significant. It holds a very important geopolitical position. It's situated at the heart of Central Asia, bordering several countries. It served as a peaceful buffer state, fostering harmonious relationships with its neighbors. But obviously we know since its occupation, its balance and its peace has been disrupted. Tibet covers 2.5 million square kilometers. It is approximately a quarter of China's land mass. This occupation has strategic implications not only for Tibetan people, but for the entire region of Asia. Resolving the Tibet and China conflict could bring peace to the entire nation of Asia, and it could send a message of understanding and dialogue rather than colonialism and invasion. And Ajay Gesang also talked about what the middle way policy was, and I'm just gonna briefly summarize it. So, the middle way approach, introduced by His Holiness the Dalai Lama, was agreed upon the majority of Tibetan citizens, and it is supported by the Tibetan parliament in exile. It seeks autonomy within Tibet, but not complete independence. I see it as the most realistic, the most quickest solution, carefully researched and presented by His Holiness, and focuses primarily on securing the fundamental rights of Tibet's inside of Tibet. Obviously, we just heard that its goal is to preserve Tibetan identity, religion, language, and tradition, and focusing on that mutual benefit, right? Tibetans have authority over its domestic affairs without actually politically separating from China. I want to talk about how I interpret the middle way path. I understand that as Tibetans, our main wish and our main kind of priority is to protect Tibetans inside of Tibet, their fundamental rights that are being stripped away from them. And I see it as no matter what sort of political stance you're on, if you want to follow the middle way policy as the first step, or whether you want to seek full independence right away, our main priority is to protect the immediate human rights abuses inside of Tibet. And so how I interpret it is that the middle way gives us a very practical, a very realistic, the most quickest solution for that. But I also want to emphasize how different perspectives in the Tibetan community are beneficial towards our movement. And I want to also talk about how the middle way policy can seem as if we want to be politically a part of China, kind of like forever, right? But I also want to mention how I said before, the world, like the political landscape of the world is rapidly changing now. There's so much conflict in, I said before, Russia, Ukraine, Israel and Palestine, also the US political election. The world is changing so fast right now, and so many countries' policies on China are rapidly changing. And I also think with the new generation, our generation, the youth, and the new emerging Tibetan generation, the limits on what is the future for Tibet are so endless. And by supporting the middle way path, it is not saying that we could never get full liberation. I think that the middle way path could be seen as just the first step of protecting the immediate human rights of Tibetans. It doesn't have to be seen as the final result, although that is what is being pitched to China, but that doesn't stop the endless possibilities that our new generations can bring. And that was kind of what I wanted to touch on, as well as I kind of see the Tibetan community, how it's given as choose this or this, choose the middle way approach or choose full independence. I think a more productive way to look at it is to sort of say, here are different perspectives, how do we work together and collaborate to bring meaning and bring productive discussion. I think that all these different perspectives are so valuable, especially the middle way path, as it's researched by Nobel Peace Prize laureates, by Dalai Lama himself, and it seeks the most practical and quickest solution to protect the immediate rights of Tibetans in Tibet. And I think that that holds a lot of value. But what I also think is that we don't know 100% sure what is in the future. But what we can do right now is promote peaceful dialogue within our communities and accept different perspectives. Because we don't 100% know what is right, what is wrong. The most practical thing to do right now as well is to talk amongst each other and promote that dialogue. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about. Thank you.
Wow, that's the kind of leader we all want you to be. You know? Absolutely, it's high time we do not engage in stupid, I'm sorry to use this word, differences. Our goal is saying let's all work together with all kinds of strategies. Please, thank you, Kunsa, thank you very much. Next on the stage, I have Kinti Namjula. Namjula, as I announced before, was the coordinator last year for WeTag Canada. Again, WeTag is Voluntary Tibet Advocacy Group. It's functional all over the world, and we have a wonderful chapter here in Toronto. So if you are not yet a part of WeTag, please become and get involved with WeTag. The current coordinator is Temala. So get in touch. Again, use all the platforms and please do something for Tibet. Thank you. Namjula, please.
Okay, hi everyone. So I'm looking around the room. I was scanning earlier today and I was noticing that a lot of you had also attended the youth advocacy workshop that happened a few months ago. Who was at that workshop? Some of you. Okay. Okay, well, welcome back. Thank you for coming to the commemoration of the 85th birthday of Professor Zambo Rinpoche. As Gesamlan mentioned, myself and Kunsa were invited to speak on the topic of why Tibet matters today. And I think Kunsel, you did a great job of highlighting your personal experience and also sharing with us your ideas of why Tibet matters to you. So from this point forward, in a few minutes, I want to open the stage to the rest of you. You will have an opportunity to share with your peers about why you think Tibet matters. Why Tibet matters to you, why Tibet matters to your friends and family, and also why Tibet should matter to non-Tibetans, to politicians, to people in power. So you'll have the opportunity to brainstorm, work together, and then share your ideas of why Tibet matters. So, as mentioned, we're here to commemorate Professor Samdech Rinpoche, and I think that the celebration of the 85th birthday of Professor Samdech Rinpoche is really a celebration of how Tibetans for many decades have embraced our Tibetan culture, our Tibetan identity, and also how for many years we've been able to fight a very resilient, a non-violent fight for freedom. And a pop quiz, how many years has it been since we first lost our country, since China's first invasion of Tibet in 1959? 65 years, yeah. Was that mental math or did you know before? Wow, that's impressive. Before coming here, I did it on the calculator, so that's really impressive. Okay, so like many cases of war and of freedom struggles around the world, like some of the ones that we mentioned earlier today, the story of Tibetans is also a story of colonial oppression. It's a story of disenfranchisement of the Tibetan people. But what makes us unique is our approach to advocacy, our dedication to ahimsa, which means non-violence, and Professor Samdech Rinpoche, as well as His Holiness the Dalai Lama, have been champions of non-violence. And I think through their guidance, we've been able to really implement that in our day-to-day lives. So before we break off into groups and think about other reasons why Tibet should matter, I want to cover some of the themes that were mentioned today. So we had speakers, including Tenzin Kunsel, Mr. Pedger, I think and then also Gesang. So thinking about everything that you've heard from the stage today, and then thinking about your own experiences of why Tibet should matter, I want you to start formulating some of the ideas or making your case about why Tibet matters, because that's what we'll be doing in a few minutes, okay? So to do a quick overview, the first point that was covered was, of course, the legacy of Professor Samdech Rinpoche, some of the things that he has accomplished over the last 85 years, the 4 commitments of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and then some of the points that he raised about the middle way approach, the geopolitical significance of Tibet, the spiritual and the cultural significance of Tibet. What else did we talk about? 2 points that we haven't yet touched on, but I want to quickly go over, is the cultural genocide that's happening. And maybe some of you have heard of the word or the term cultural genocide and what that means to you. And I want you to think about cultural genocide as a reason why we should care about Tibet, why Tibet matters to us and to the rest of the world. There's 2 examples of cultural genocide that I want to bring up. The first one is China's policies that were designed to erase the Tibetan identity. So an early example is of cultural genocide goes back to 1959, where Mao Zedong's China had set out to destroy the cultural heritage of the Tibetan people. A fact that I came across recently is that by 1962, so within 3 years of the invasion of Tibet, almost 100% of monasteries, almost 100% of nunneries in Tibet were destroyed. Alongside that, almost 100% of monks or disrobe. So that was a huge hit on our culture because our culture is very closely tied to Buddhism. Another example is, and maybe some of you know about this as well, is the ongoing cultural genocide that's happening inside of Tibet. And a relevant example is the colonial-style boarding school that's happening inside of Tibet right now. So similar to what Canada's legacy of residential schools have done to Indigenous people in Canada, something very similar is happening in Tibet. So that's something that you can bring up in conversation with your peers, in conversation with leaders in Canada, because it's something that we can relate to, right? It's an example that is very parallel with Canada's own history. So that's something that I want to talk about as well. And lastly, the topic of environmental significance of Tibet. It was touched on by Gesala, but I'll go over it again because of how relevant environment is, how relevant climate change is to our world. So because we all live on this planet, what happens in one country or one region affects us everywhere, right? Although we have borders that identify this is Canada, this is the US, when something happens environmentally, it doesn't know borders. So if there is a forest fire in Canada, it impacts people in the US. So similarly, the things that are happening in Tibet also impacts not just Tibetans in the area, but also neighboring countries, countries around the world. An example that I want to share is our, how do I put this? So an example is the dams that are being built in Tibet, how the rivers that are flowing out of Tibet is being impacted downstream in other countries like Nepal, like India. And I want to hone in on the example of Tibet being known as the third pole. Has anybody heard that term before? Tibet being called the third pole? Yeah? So it's called the third pole because after the Arctic and the Antarctic regions, Tibet actually has the highest volumes of fresh water in the world. So outside of the North and the South Pole, Tibet holds the largest reserves of ice and glaciers, which means that when those ice and glaciers melt, it becomes fresh water that flows into some of the biggest rivers in the world. So if China has control over the rivers in Tibet, if we're building dams inside of Tibet, it impacts almost 2 billion people downstream. So if China has control over what is happening in Tibet, it doesn't just impact the Tibetans inside of Tibet, but it also impacts people in countries like Vietnam, in Bangladesh, in India. So I think these are things that you can think about and also advocate for as someone who is Tibetan, someone who is naturally a Tibetan advocate. Okay, so that's my overview of what we talked about today. So now we'll get into small groups, which is pretty straightforward now because we're already in small groups. So work within your tables. We have 1 table over here, 2 and 3 tables. So within your group, I would like to invite you to think about why Tibet matters. So you can share your ideas about why Tibet matters to you, why Tibet is important for your friends and family, like I mentioned, and then why Tibet should be something that others should also think about, like politicians, your teachers, people in their workplaces. So we'll give you a few minutes to think. If you want to write down your ideas, you can do that on paper or on your phone. And then in the next maybe 5 to 10 minutes, we'll come back together as a big group, and then each group will present their case. You're basically making a case about why Tibet matters. So we'll do that. It's 7:48, so maybe we'll come back at 8 o'clock, okay?
All So Tibetan was the speaker who gave you the brief introduction or the biography of His Eminence Professor Sambar Rinpoche, whose 85th birthday we are celebrating today. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you very much. And then our other speaker was Tenzin Kunsela. Please come on the stage. You have all heard her. Thank you very much for your wonderful, wonderful speech and the call to the youth and the Tibetan population in general. Thank you, Tenzin Kunsela. And Tenzin Kunsela is our newest youth coordinator. And we would also like to offer a thank you Khada to Namjola for being here, even with a very tight schedule. Thank you for leading the meeting for the entire year and also coming today and delivering a wonderful speech and initiating an activity. So your time starts now. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Group first, group first.
So as you speak to the rest of us, please introduce yourselves and then make your case about why Tibet matters to you, okay? Go ahead. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Lindsay. Tibet matters because of the natural resources and the influence on the water
Speak out.
production.
Speak a little loud.
Big influence on the water production. And my name is Tenfi Lingsel, and it's India. My name is Tenzin Lingsel, and the second point to me why Tibet matters is because, as you know, like Tibet is like the least free country in the world, and it reflects deep concerns over human rights abuses, the suppression of Tibetan identity, and the lack of democratic freedom in this region. Tibet is important because it embodies the value of compassion for the betterment of humanity.
Good job.
Thank you so much.
Good job, good job.
Great. I think you've encompassed a lot of the important points that we covered today about human rights, the environmental rights in Tibet, and why we as Tibetans care about Tibet. So thank you. We'll move on to this group. Can we get 1, 2, or 3 volunteers?
Tibet matters to me because issues in Tibet like freedom and culture preservations are important for global human rights.
Thank you. So one by one, China Diksabe, in Somaya, China Diksabe.
Hi, my name is Jerry. So I'm answering why Tibet matters, right? So Tibet itself is a nation filled with rich history, right? And us being Tibetan, our history is a part of that country. So if we forget what Tibet is, we're forgetting a part of ourselves, which is not good.
My name is Norbu, and the reason why I think Tibet matters is because Tibet holds like most of the important monasteries, statues, and also the Potala Palace.
My name is Sambo, and the reason I think Tibet is important is because Tibet is important in Asian politics, especially in China and India, affecting regional stability.
My name is Siren, and the reason I think Tibet is important is I'm Tibetan, and everyone I know is Tibetan.
virtual. Since the nickname Turpora, she true supply the water supply, Becker Chibu, Lumba Shindan, Pebet Tibet, Bed Zashimu, and thanks it very much.
Because it's not just a Tibetan issue, but it affects all of humanity and sends a message to like everyone in the world. That's what I think. Tibet matters to me because it is a big part of my identity and who I am, and it's been a part of my life forever.
Okay, so with this wonderful activity of our participants here speaking, I will wrap up the evening. I would like to thank our speakers, of course, but more important than that, I would like to thank today's participants. And you guys stayed until now, so I know you have school tomorrow, college tomorrow. Thank you so much for coming. Not just coming, but you were very attentive, you participated, and I'm sure the other speakers felt the same thing, but when I'm speaking and you're just literally looking into my eyes, that doesn't often happen with young participants. You were not distracted, you were focused. Thank you so much. And Richard Gere's, thank you. And in Richard Gere, one of, I think Kunzel talked about Richard Gere. So Richard Gere also said that you Tibetans, you are all little Dalai Lamas. So you, wherever you go, you are the Tibetan ambassador. You are the ambassador of His Holiness. You are, most important of all, ambassador of the Tibetans in Tibet. So do whatever you can, small or big, does not matter. Please stay engaged. Please do something. Give your best. Most important than that, just take care of yourself. Remember always that you are a Tibetan and you're born with a responsibility. Thank you very much once again, everybody. And my team members, thank you so much. So I'm so happy to conclude this very successful event. And on behalf of all of us, I wish His Eminence Professor Samdara Rinpoche a very happy birthday. His Eminence does not want his birthday celebrated, but for us, it's a way to say thank you for a lifelong legacy of what you have done for Tibet. And Professor Samdara Rinpoche is, as I said before, the right hand of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. At the age of 85, Professor Samdara Rinpoche is still in the office of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, working day and night to fulfill His Holiness's wishes and to advocate for the Tibetans in Tibet back home. Thank you.